Hey guys, welcome back to the I Drew This podcast. So this week we're going to do something a little bit different than what you saw last week. Actually a lot different. Last week we did a little speed drawing, or a little drawing, showcasing some new art supplies I got in. This week I am doing a commission for a logo for a fellow podcaster slash YouTuber, Zach. His podcast called Hear Me Out. We're going to do a little logo for him and his guys over there on his channel, which I'll link in the card below so that you guys can go ahead and check that out after the video and go see my logo, hopefully in use over on his channel. But yes, people do pay you to make art, to draw silly pictures, to sit at a computer. I've been told, oh, you got a bartending degree. Guess what? Getting paid for art. Yeah. Okay, so what you guys saw earlier on in this video here was me just kind of figuring out what iterations and, tackling different ideas of how I wanted to kind of start and go about the process of designing this logo. What you're seeing now is what I eventually got to was doing a trace over of the photo of Zach, and getting the right proportions and the right look of it, and then going in and editing what I decided would be the best outcome for the logo. So what I do is I trace each individual portion of what I want to use for the logo. So I start with his face, I get his hat, I get his shirt, and then I get his arms. Because each piece needs to be traced individually so that I can go back and I can edit each piece so that it can be its own variable when coming together with the logo. The tricky part about using a side profile like this and trying to figure out how to, trace over the pieces and get them together is that you can't see all the different pieces hiding behind, his arm and behind his other, hand and things like that. So you have to try to trace over what you can see and just kind of make up the back half so that you can close in your shapes. Because if you can't close in your shapes, when I use the shape builder tool in the corner there, it doesn't want to connect the items and the paths together the right way. You'll get weird crossovers and you'll get weird diagonals just kind of shooting across your shapes to try to connect themselves because there isn't an endpoint on some of your tracings to make it fit. So a little shortcut that I got with the arms is I did the closer arm. I traced it. I got it to where, the shape that I wanted. I got it the look that I wanted. And then what I can do is, since, hands are proportional and they are, essentially the same thing, just a flip or a mirror of it, is I can take the front focus of the arm, duplicate it, and then I can just slightly shrink it because it's going to go back in perspective. It's going to be behind his other arm and behind the side of his face. So I can shrink it a little bit and match up to the thumb that is revealed, and I can kind of use the original tracing and just mirror it to flip and darken it because it is, farther back and it's a little bit farther away from the viewpoint. So it's a little bit darker than the front one. And that way I don't have to retrace a whole other arm that I can't actually see and make it a little bit trickier for me. What you'll see me trying to do throughout this is I'm eyedroppering different reds. I'm trying to match up with different colors. Then you have to go with, the inner portions of the sleeve and the under portion of the hat bill and, his other arm and things like that. They're all going to be different shades of whatever color you make for the frontal one. So what you can do is you can double tap your color picker and just slide it down, towards the blacks or down towards the darker reds to try and make it a shade darker than the front of the shirt. Or you can just pick what you think is a similar color that is the shade darker that you're looking for to try and get that look of it, under the bill being darker or in the sleeve being darker or behind the arm being darker than the other one. I think the trickiest part of this look or this design was how to tackle his facial hair. Like, do I want to go in and I want to try to draw a bunch of, pieces of hair and how to get that to look like a beard, or I just want to do a shape outlining where his facial hair would be and just kind of tweaking it and filtering it out. So what I did is I went with, a film grain to kind of give it that look, and then I just dialed down the opacity to try and get some skin color coming through the film grain to kind of give you that, stubble 5 o'clock shadow look, to kind of give you the, you can tell, you obviously get the idea that is facial hair. So that's kind of how I went about that portion of his face logo. Towards the end here, what I'm doing is I'm cleaning up the little corners and little edges. When I was doing the tracings and I was doing the fill-ins and stuff, you get these weird little overlaps and you get little outlines and things that aren't matching up because you have to do, when I do that shape builder and I have the expanded outline shapes, you get these edges or extra points that want to stick out. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of cleaning up those edges and just making them more of a smooth transition from shape to shape. Because if you do want to blow this up, or if you do want to, put this on things, it's going to show up on those larger scales when you try to blow it up, that you'll get those weird points hanging out, or you'll get the overlaps that show up, or you'll get the leaks where like the lines don't match up, so you get a little bit of background shown through. You don't want to see that. So I'm just doing some cleanup towards the end here. And what we decided on for his logo, he calls it "Hear Me Out." So like what he wanted was the word coming from his hands, because he's shouting it, so he wants it to, hear me out. Starting small with the H and growing in size as it comes away from him, to kind of emphasize that shouting motion, or that, that emphasis on the name of the company coming, or the podcast, the name being more prominent, so it grows in size as it comes away from the face. When you're trying to decide what, you can either go with a hand lettering, drawing out your own words, or you can go with a typeface. When you're doing that, you don't want to do something too crazy to where it's, drawing away from the look of the logo, or you don't want it to do too much to where it's harder to read some of the words. You just kind of want to pick something that has an interesting look, but still holds true to the idea of the company or the podcast. You don't want it to be too crazy. So I went with, just a pretty simple sans serif that had some nice geometric, so that it would kind of shrink and grow the way I would like it to kind of fit in the idea of the shout. If I had some more intricate typefaces and stuff, it might be a little bit harder for it to do that flex to fit in the cone idea and like the growing in size. So something a little bit more simple. And I cut the recording before I sent it to him. He got back with me. He wanted me to go back and add in some essence of his tattoos to try and give it more personality to fit him, because all it looks like is a normal guy with a hat and a stubble and all that. But if I went back in and added his tattoos, it's more, this is Zach. So at the end of the video, I'll go ahead and I'll drop in the photo of the final version when I added in his tattoos. So you guys can see that look of what he eventually ended up with.